We drew up contracts. We changed their billing process because previously they would bill at the end of the month for services completed in that month. And then they would wait 60 to 90 days to get paid. And I said, well, so what's the problem? And my client goes, well, I don't understand. I said, so you have bridge financing right now of upwards of $1 million because you have a 120-day gap between your payroll and your collectibles.
Yeah.
And she's like, what do you mean? And I said, well, part of the reason, now here's one of the big things. When they first came on to me as clients, they had a $40,000 payable that they had paid. I mean, it wasn't in deficit, but over the course of 8 separate years before they came to me, they paid $42,000 in late penalties for payroll remittances because they're a seasonal business. And I said to her, so what could you have done with that $42,000? She's like, I could have hired a whole other person. I said, yes.
Right.
I said, and then the rest of you wouldn't have to be working so much. I said, but the problem is because of how you have your billing cycles built, you are intentionally handicapping your cash flow.
Welcome to the Karas Wright Show. I'm Karas Wright, and on today's podcast, we're going to have a really candid conversation that's unscripted. I am bringing on Robin Mitchell from RAM Accounting, and oh my goodness, this woman and I have had some really dynamic conversations over, better part of a decade.
Mm-hmm.
And in all different places, at the brewery, in the middle of the street with cars moving around as we are talking about life, business, everything about under the sun, kids, COVID.
Exchanging books.
Exchanging books. I still think I have a book I got to return to you. Okay, I will make a mental note and then we can have another conversation. But really the conversation that we have continually had, and I think is really an important one, is people get into business for so many different reasons, but people leave business for so many different reasons. And you right now are working with a lot of business owners as an accountant that are getting ready to sell.
Well, or aren't getting ready to sell.
Or aren't getting ready to sell. So walk me through what's happening for those folks.
Well, the biggest thing is business owners get into business for, like you said, so many different reasons, but two are kind of the top two. One is they train to do something, or they've been trained to do something because they decided to, go into a trade or something like that in high school or out of high school, or they took a trade while they were after high school, whatever. They're working for somebody, or whether it's a profession, doesn't matter. They're being trained by somebody to do something. We'll use a plumber, for example. And eventually that individual says, I can make more money by doing this thing by myself and hire my own crews versus working for so-and-so and getting a set salary, set wage, whatever that is per day, per hour, or even a salary. And so that's what we call the entrepreneurial spark. So they decide that they're going to go from a doer to an owner. The problem is that the vast majority of the time that doer never changes. The doer is still the doer, but now they have to do all the management things as well. But nobody's ever taught them how to do the management things. The other way that people get into business is that you have what we call the serial entrepreneurs. They start a business at 14, and then they start a business at 16, and then 17, and then 18, and then 20, and then 25. And they're what we call happily unemployable, because they just don't have that right personality or the right character traits to work for somebody else. And let's be honest, the world is full of far more of those than the employable. And if we didn't have those people, we wouldn't have Amazon, we wouldn't have Apple, we wouldn't have Microsoft, we wouldn't have all of the things that we have today. Because those are the people that are happily unemployable and realize that they can make the world better by doing things on their own. So again, those business owners, they're far more adaptable than the first version, because they've always had to adapt. They have to adapt every single time their environment changes, their situation changes, their finances changes. They're whether they move, whether it's their family, whether it's the dynamic of their business, whether it's the dynamic of the industry, whatever. They're very, very adaptable. The first version tends to not be so adaptable because they're the doers and they were never trained to be adaptable. They were trained to do the doing. And that's okay because we need doers. But when you have a doer that's a business owner, they don't see the bigger picture. All they see is get up, do the doing, bill for the doing, collect the bill for the doing, and then go do it again. And the problem is that we have a lot of business owners, we look at our age group, where they're getting to that point where we're really tired of doing the doing. And so I have to have hard conversations with my clients and go, so where do you see yourself in 10, 15, 20 years, 5 years? Or do you still want to be doing the doing in 5 years? Or do you actually see value in what you've built over the last 10, 15, 20, 25 years? And 9.5 times out of 10, the look on my client's face is pure shock. What do you mean I have something of value? What do you mean I have something that I can sell? I can't sell this? Yeah, you can. The vast majority of businesses are saleable. And having that conversation with business owners is very hard, especially with our age group. As we have the children, well, I mean, yours are gone already, but as we get to that 14, 15, 16, and it's like, oh my God, they're leaving in 2 years, 3 years, 1 year. Oh my God, how do we plan for that? It's a very similar reaction that business owners have to hearing that their business is worth selling. Some are very amenable to it, others are very much not. The biggest piece is to have that conversation of going, but do you actually want to do this still for the next 10, 15, 20 years or till you keel over doing whatever it is that you're doing? Or do you actually want to take the time to work with somebody to intentionally build value inside your business so that somebody else down the road can come along and go, hey, I want that?
Yeah. You know, it's so funny because when I'm thinking about this, a few things are popping up. One is the number of times that you and I've collaborated over the years when I was a bank manager and a business banker and saw people that were, oh my God, 15 years. Those are the ones when we want to get them before they're ready to sell because we can help them plan.
Yeah.
But it's the ones that are coming really close to that transition and that aha moment. Oh my God, my kids don't want to take over the business. Or they shouldn't take over the business.
Which is usually a bigger case.
Or we've got one person that really should and the other kids shouldn't. That's a whole legacy component.
100%.
But the other thing that's coming up for me is the work that I do now as a business advisor and a systems business coach is really understanding the underpinning of what you have and the value of documenting those processes.
Absolutely.
And creating the simple, repeatable processes so that they can be cataloged into an operations manual. You can make that decision. And then it's I got something here. I had a conversation with a business owner who's a startup. And when we were starting to work together, I said, well, what's the end in mind? And she goes, what do you mean? I was like, well, what you've got here is the underpinnings of actually a franchise. And they just wanted to buy and install vending machines and just to have a little side gig. I was wait a second, you've actually got something that could be franchisable. If you look at the operations of it, and if you put together a process and document everything, and then create what does the mission vision of everything. And they're like, okay. So when we talk about this and you talk about those two different types of entrepreneurials, I also think about Michael E. Gerber and E-Myth.
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about that many times over the years.
Yeah, and all of his different versions.
Right. But it's that triad of you're that technical expert that decides I want to go into business for myself because I can make more money, or I just don't like working for the person that I was working for. That person who's a manager And then the visionary,
Yep.
which is I'm interpreting that as the serial entrepreneur,
Yep.
right? And often we have one, maybe two, but really rare that you've got the triad.
It's very rare.
Yeah.
And especially when a lot of times it's a solo vision, because it's one of a pair, it's one of a spouse that has that vision, because a lot of times you have the other spouse is gainfully employed somewhere else. And it's a very rare situation where you have both partners of a relationship involved in that business at the same time. The vast majority of clients that I deal with actually are the second, where both the spouses, both the husband and the wife, in this case, because most of my clients are very traditional, have both spouses involved in their businesses. So having that transition conversation is very, very different from when you're having that transition conversation when only one spouse is involved. Because when only one spouse is involved, there's always a safety net of that secondary employment, that secondary guaranteed income, that you know that the kids and the house and the food and the groceries and everything are going to be tended to and cared for. But when you have both spouses and 100% of the finances of the family as a whole wrapped up into this business, that transition process looks fundamentally different. To give you an example, so in the last 3 years, I have helped clients sell 3 different businesses. And I'm in the process of helping a fourth. Now, over my career, I've helped sell multiple businesses when I worked with MNP, and we actually bought multiple businesses for clients as well. Dealt with consolidations and things like that. And it's interesting to be able to see both ends. But in the cases that I've been dealing with these last 3, the first was a husband and wife, where for 25 years they'd been with a previous accountant who had never advised them to actually incorporate their business. And they were.
I'm sorry, I'm just having like that, oh my God moments.
Yeah. So when they came to me, they actually came to me as a referral from a number of other contacts that I had, which is 100% of my business, actually, to be honest. And so they came to me, and literally the friends that referred them said to me, they need help. They need you. Can you please fix this? So I met with them, and my very first reaction was, guys, like, we got to fix this now. And then I looked at them and I said, you guys have been profiting over $200,000 a year for the last 18 years. Profiting, not revenue. $200,000, husband and wife over the age of 60, paying personal taxes on $200,000 split between the two of them over 18 years. And I was horrified. I was like, you guys have been giving the government away anywhere from 20 to 23% more per year than you ever had to give away. And I said, do you guys actually need all of that money to live off of? They're like, no, we've never, this was started as a side gig, is what they started this business as. So anyway, they started this business. It was a partnership. So when you go to sell a business, in order to be able to access, now we're going to get technical, the lifetime capital gains exemption, you have to have owned that business for a minimum of 24 months. Now, when they say that, they actually mean you have to have owned the shares of the corporation for a minimum of 24 months. Now, there's loopholes that we can get around. Because they've owned the business and ran the business for 18 plus years, we couldn't just sell the business, because if you sell a partnership that's not a corporation, you have no ability to sell it as a complete entity. You have to sell it piecemeal. You have to sell the assets. Well, the problem is, when you sell the assets as private individuals, you pay 100% of those capital gains personally, which is a massive hit. And it also came in the same year that everybody out east decided it would be a really great idea to up everything to 66 2/3 instead of 50%. We won't have that conversation today.
We could have a whole podcast on.
We could have a whole podcast. We won't talk about that one. But anyway, so we involved some very, very reputable tax lawyers in Calgary to help us. So what we had to do is roll it into a corporation, sell the assets to a second corporation, wind up the second corporation, and then sell the first corporation to the buyer in order to access those capital gains exemptions and be able to bump everything up to a proper value. So they got a tidy sum to retire on. But it was husband and wife. The second business was a sole entrepreneur It's a corporation. And rather than sell it outright, we decided to bring in partners. So we sold pieces of the business rather than sell it as a whole, because the individual wants to continue being able to run the business themselves, but the capital was needed to move it to the next chapter. And there's going to be some built-in plans in the background to assist not only that move to the next chapter, but eventually the client will move out of the business. The third one was a husband and wife, a corporation already owned, and they just sold it outright. They actually sold to one of their customers, who was one of their biggest customers, saw them as a threat, so the customer bought them out. And it was and all of them were very profitable. All of them were very happy. None of them had any idea that they had something to sell. So it's having that, and I have a fourth client, actually, not the one that I'm currently in the process of selling, but a fourth one where we've built a 5-year plan. So we met 2 years ago and we sat down and went, okay, this is the kind of business to have. This is the kind of industry you have. It's a recession-proof for the most part industry, because it's one of those things that everybody's always going to need. But the services that they provide are very specific, but they're very repeatable. And so the nice thing is we drew up contracts, things that they had never done before. We drew up contracts. We changed their billing process, because previously they would bill at the end of the month for services completed in that month. And then they would wait 60 to 90 days to get paid. And I said, well, so what's the problem? And my client goes, well, I don't understand. I said, so you have bridge financing right now of upwards of $1 million because you have a 120-day gap between your payroll and your collectibles. Yeah. And she's like, what do you mean? And I said, well, part of the reason, now here's one of the big things. When they first came on to me as clients, they had a $40,000 payable that they had paid. I mean, it wasn't in deficit, but over the course of 8 separate years before they came to me, they paid $42,000 in late penalties for payroll remittances because they're a seasonal business. And I said to her, so what could you have done with that $42,000? She's like, I could have hired a whole other person. I said, yes. Right. I said, and then the rest of you wouldn't have to be working so much. I said, but the problem is, because of how you have your billing cycles built, you are intentionally handicapping your cash flow. She goes, what do you mean? And I said, well, if you set up a contract with a client, I said, the services that you provide are contractable. So set up an annual contract, billable monthly. Mm-hmm. And she said, yeah, but we have these sundries and whatever that I have to bill monthly. I said, fine, bill those monthly. I said, but the difference is those are consumables. Your sundries are consumables, which means that they have no bearing on your cash flow because you already have those sundries in inventory. You have to buy them 3-4 times a year anyway, and you just bill your client for what you use out of your inventory. So you're not out that money in any given specific month. I said, but if you don't bill at the beginning of the month and collect prior to your payroll having to be issued, now you have to front personally. You have to front the payroll and the remittances before your revenue even comes in. Mm-hmm. And so we turned the whole thing on its head. We started documenting processes because their intention is within the next 5 years, they want to sell. So in the meantime, we've been working with, have you heard, I'm going to get their names wrong, Robert Welke and
I know the name.
With Mexit.
Yeah.
Amazing human beings. Yeah. Rob and his business partner came to me actually through all of those chamber sessions that were put on by Jamie when he was here through COVID, when we started doing all of those business sessions and whatever. So it was actually a collaboration between Elizabeth McRae, who is now Village Wealth, and they were just starting out at the time, Mexit, which was Robert and his business partner, and the chamber here in town. And what an amazing collaboration that was. And the 5 years that I've spent working with all of those people has been phenomenal. And so we brought Robert out to meet with my clients and to go, okay, well, where is the current tangible value and where can we intentionally build that that transitional values and build that intrinsic value, i.e. goodwill. Where's the branding? Where's the reputation? That comes with consistent delivery of services and consistent contracts. So if you deliver a contract, an annual contract, and you can bill it monthly, it doesn't matter whether you provide it, I provide it, Sarah provides it, or somebody else provides it. If that contract exists with that business names and that business reputation attached to it, there's a certain level of quality that goes along with it. Somebody sells Apple, you still expect it to be Apple, right? So that's, in having those kinds of conversations with business owners, it's a very enlightening experience for them. Because like you said, many of them are not those visionaries. They never start with the end in mind. They start with going, I can make more money doing this.
Right.
Or it's out of desperation, where they go, I can no longer afford to be an employee. I have to go do this because I'm being handicapped here, whatever that looks like, in my employment. There's a glass ceiling. I can't, like we said earlier, we can't move on unless the owner either sells to you as an employee or kicks the bucket and you get the opportunity to buy the business or break out of it.
Yeah. Well, not only that, but we have so many, especially in the Calgary area, oil and gas, like just out of, and not only oil and gas, we're seeing more and more layoffs happening. And so out of that, we have people coming in who are technical experts into being self-employed and need that understanding of how one aspect of business ripples over to the branding, to the operations, to the finance, to how you lead and your leadership brand, regardless of whether you are a solopreneur or you have a team. There is a leadership style that you are bringing to how you are approaching your business. And so being able to catch them earlier, that's the trick in my mind, as opposed to waiting, I want to sell this business in 5 years. That's almost too late. And I love the fact that you're working with Village, because they are amazing at being able to identify those conversations early and make those transitions to different business partners to say, here we go. It's also really evident that those collaborations, if you're thinking about business in a deeper level with the end in mind, then you're able to actually map out who are your key experts that you want to have help you along the way. So just think of that mom and pop shop who didn't have their accounting set up properly, who was still running. How further ahead they would have been if they had a business advisor, a strong accountant, a great marketing team behind them to look at, here's where I want to go.
Well, and three things popped in my head just as you were saying that. I'll go back to this one just for the first.
Pick one, Robin.
I'll go back to this one, but I still want to touch on the other two. So the first one is absolutely. And marketing was one of the big ones that I spoke to them about. And now when they came to me, they were already dog tired. Yeah. But the problem is that it was the husband and the son, the grown son, that were doing all the work. They had 2 subcontractors that were working with them part-time, only seasonally. And because it was a very seasonal based business, but they were grossing over $500,000 a year, just the 2 of them. And I said to the business owner at one point, I said, if you had a website, because they didn't even have a website, 100% of their revenue was based on word of mouth. I mean, it's that generation, right? Like that's how they work. And 90% of the work that they did was for farms and acreages. And so and of course, this farmer talks to that farmer, talks to that farmer, talks to that farmer, and this acreage talks to, and of course, once you pull into those like little acreage communities, like the one down Big Rock or the one out by Ravencrest or whatever, as soon as you see one truck pull in there, everybody starts calling you, right? So they had stickers on the sides of their trucks. That was the extent of their advertising. They had no website. They had a phone number, but that was it. And I said to him at one point, I said, have you ever considered building a website? I said, because right now this conversation can go in 2 different directions. I said, I can help you and your wife retire and we can sell this for the hundreds of thousands of dollars that it's currently worth, because it wasn't yet worth $1 million at the time. I said, or you can work with me for the next 5 years and we can build this into a $5 million brand.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want to do? And he looked at me and he goes, I'm tired. I'm done. And which was really sad because the individual that we sold it to is going to do that because he has the means to be able to explode that business into a $4 or $5 million business.
But what's brilliant about that is you have given the insight to be able to say, here you go. And as that sale happens, to be able to go, here's what is available to that if you continue that relationship.
Right.
Right?
Unfortunately, that was not the client. Yeah, it was a bit of a sticky transfer, but
right. But that's what's beautiful about looking at transition in a strong manner.
Absolutely.
Of saying, here's where we are, here's where we're going. If you can have all parties come to the table and say, what is the legacy that each one of them want to build on the sale and on the purchase side? I know that's rare to have that happen.
It is.
But imagine how many more legacy type of businesses we would have that last the test.
And it's funny because going into the second business, that's exactly the conversation that we had, which is why we chose to bring in partners with an eventual buyout intention, not guarantee, because my client chose, because they want to stay on. I have to be very careful how I choose my words. They want to stay on to continue the branding, continue the legacy, and continue the reputation through the transition process so that the new owners don't lose that. Yeah. Because a lot of times in businesses, actually, I lie, this is actually my fourth business I've sold because I actually sold one 2 years ago. I would say that now I was actually part of the two birds sale. And when the buyers came on with that, they had a completely different vision in mind. So obviously, I mean, they have their own counsel, they had their own accountants and things like that, and they're doing beautiful things with that business now. But it's different than what the previous owners had in mind. And so a lot of times with businesses, when new owners come in and buy the business, again, similar to having two different kinds of entrepreneurs, you have two different kinds of buyers. You have those, or well, three, I guess. You have one that wants to come in and run it the way they've always wanted to run it. And a lot of times that's when you have either a customer that really enjoys your service, your business, but thinks it can be run in a different, better way. Where you have an employee that really wants to take over and thinks that they can do a better job and feels that they really can in an intentional, planned manner. The second is when you have somebody that is true to the legacy and they really just want to see the continuity of the brand moving forward. And they do what they can to keep on the prior business owners to absorb as much information from that prior business owner as they possibly can in terms of delivery, in terms of services, in terms of products, in terms of contracts, customers, everything. And so they want the prior owner there to be there intentionally as part of the transition to make sure that it's as seamless as possible. Then you have the third one that comes in and they have absolutely no clue what they're doing. They just want to go, they want to be a business owner. And they do very little to any research up front. They buy the business and then they wash their hands of all advisory and just try to take the reins and do what they can. I suppose I like the fourth would be when you have an investor. When an investor comes in and goes, look, here's capital. I just want a piece of the pie. In which case, a lot of times business owners are willing to continue working in the business now that there's new capital so that they can move forward with a new chapter, but still continuing in some form or function inside of the business. So that's the one. That was the one piece I wanted. So the second piece, you're saying get to them early. It's interesting that you bring that up because part of the reason that we had to reschedule this podcast was because of a field trip that I went with my son's grade 8 class on Monday. And kudos to the teachers in Westmount for taking the initiative to collaborate with Sarah Moore and her partners at Artist Avenue. They put together an entire Business 101 presentation for the grade 9s, the grade 8s, and the grade 7s. So the grade 9s went last Monday, the grade 8s went this Monday, and the grade 7s are going the next Monday. It is a phenomenal presentation. And it talks to them about exactly everything that we just said. It talks to them about different business structures, how to do finances, how to make sure that your vendors get paid, how to deal with accounts receivable and accounts payable. What does your accounting structure look like? What does your corporate structure look like? How do you value your time? How do you value your product? How do you figure out how to do a SWOT analysis? They talked about SWOT analysis. I was so impressed. And so that is one of the big things that I feel has been lacking in our generation of business owners, is that we all have to learn boots on the ground, how to run a business. And as our society continues to move forward, and I'm going to use this reference, I haven't done so in a long time, post-COVID, because for our generation, for our kids' generation, post-COVID is their post-war, is their post-depression, is their post-1987 recession. This is theirs. And so they need to take those lessons that we've learned over the last 5 to 6 years and put them forward. And we as a society need to alter our education system such that we start to build those lessons we've learned in the last 6 years into our education system. And this is a clear indication of that.
Oh, completely. I love how Westmount has taken, because my kids went to Westmount, and turned that upside down. It reminds me of the work that I used to do with junior achievement years ago, but in a way that is far more performative in getting them earlier. So junior achievement had a program called the company program, but it was geared towards grade 11, grade 12s. And you would take a group of young entrepreneurs through that entrepreneurial journey, from product ideation all the way to product development. And then they would showcase and sell. And in the cases of 1 or 2 that I was involved with probably about 15 years ago, now I'm dating myself, it was actually showcased at South Centre Mall in Calgary.
Oh, okay.
And so bloody cool to watch that idea and the spark. But also the fact that I hadn't even considered that connection between post-war and post-COVID. Like, there is that opportunity to be able to transition how we look at this. So very important. But I also want to just bring in the fact that you're right. So many of us entrepreneurs have learned the hard way. And so that's why I'm actually building a program, a 12-month program that is geared around teaching the elements of being a business owner throughout the course of a year.
That's amazing.
So it's been a brainchild I've had since I was a business banker. And of course, talking about being an employee inside a box.
Mm-hmm.
And I went and talked to the powers that be back in 2009, I think it was. And they're like, no, we can't.
That's when they tell you to stay in your lane.
And you stay in your lane. Be good, girl. Go sit. Shoo. And I was like, no. This has to happen. And so now being outside that box, really recognizing what my lane is being a business advisor who coaches and consults for a living. I work with accountants. I work with that but am I passionate about, let's learn what we don't know. Let's bring in the experts.
Yeah.
And so this is, I'm working with Coach Core. So I don't know if you know Julie and Tanya from Coach Core here. It's a brilliant company, Okotoks based.
Didn't know they existed.
Yes. Oh, I got to introduce you.
Please do.
Ladies. they're helping me with the underpinning of everything, all of the program development, everything. And then I'm partnering with Systems Business Coach to leverage some of their tools while I get this up and running. So
Amazing.
it is going to take what we should be teaching in schools, but we're going to do it in our 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. I have had more conversations, Robin, I'm going to squirrel for a second, with 70-year-old female entrepreneurs in the last year than I have ever had in my entire career supporting business owners. And damn, they are brilliant.
You know, do you read and or listen to Gary Vaynerchuk?
Yes.
Isn't he amazing?
Yes.
So his biggest thing is, it doesn't matter how old you are. You can start and run and sell a business literally at any age.
Right?
Jimmy Buffett started a brand new business at 82. Mary Kay started her brand new business at 55. Like, we can be anything, anytime. There is no age limit on running and owning and having brilliant ideas to run a business.
Yeah.
So interesting that you bring up junior achievement, because a billion years ago, I was also involved with junior achievement. Except I was teaching the 4 to 6s. I wasn't teaching the 11 to 12s.
Yeah.
And of course, so we were doing basic accounting and things like that. But we don't have it anymore. I mean, does junior achievement still exist?
I was on the board here in the foothills. I can't even remember, 2006, 2008, something like that. And then in the city, or in Calgary. And I don't know if they exist anymore.
It'd be interesting to look into.
And if they don't, they need to, or something needs to happen up this.
We'll restart it.
We'll restart it. We're going to we should start a bar. No. We should start a band.
No.
Okay.
That would be a really bad idea.
Okay.
You don't want to hear me sing.
You could be on the drums.
I have no rhythm. I can choreograph. That's about it.
I can't dance. So there we go.
Okay. But when you're talking about teaching them early,
right.
So interestingly enough, so part of the CTF course that they're doing in Westmount now for all the 7, 8s, and 9s, unfortunately, it's only once a week, which kind of sucks, but it is full year. So we have a new teacher in this year who has a full contract. Yay! For the first time in a long time. And so she is going to be sticking around. So the plan was what they're doing is they actually are building a business. Each of them, grade 7s, 8s, and 9s. So this session with Artist Avenue is actually just the first part of it. So they're actually going to be, and I gave her trouble because she said Shark Tank instead of Dragon's Den. But I said, we are Canadian.
We are Canadian.
Like, let's do that. Anyway, so they will be presenting business plans and creating business plans, whether it's with a service, whether it's brick and mortar, whether it's a product, whether they're building it all. And then they have to present to Dragon's Den for an ask for financing.
I just got chills
right?
Thinking about that.
It's crazy.
So I want in.
That's what I said. So I talked to Mrs. Boland and I said, hey, I don't know who you are planning on having on this like Dragon's Den panel, but I'm in. And I have like business coaches, lawyers, financiers. I have angel investors, like actual angel investors that would love to come be part of this.
Oh, I so want in.
Okay.
That is absolutely brilliant. It also reminds me, and I know we had Lemonade Day here.
Yes, it's coming back.
And so that is another really great way that is not limited to one specific school.
Right.
To be able to go. And so I would say if it's there, and if you are a entrepreneur who is anywhere in, it's around the world.
Yes.
Look at opportunities to be able to mentor.
Yep.
And get in and help these young people understand, because A, they're going to learn about money. B, they're going to learn about systems. C, it's always great to have a side gig. Even if they are an employee, it's always great to have a side gig or something that fuels your passion. So absolutely amazing. Robin, I just got we're wrapping up here, and I knew we were going to get the hook at some point in time.
We can talk for hours.
We can, and we have.
Truly.
And so I want to leave an open invitation to come back in
anytime
on the Karas Wright Show. And I know that you do, but I can't wait to hear all of the amazing impact that you make on different businesses here in town. And the fact that you do what I really want all of our listeners to do, which is lead with heart. So
I
thank you.
try.
Thank you so very much.
Well, thanks for having me.